Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to episode 81 of Talking Asperger's with Andrew. My name's Andrew Marsh, and I'm autistic. I have Asperger's syndrome, and I now help employers better manage people like me in their business. And I do that for two reasons. One, because I'm passionate about people who have Asperger's being more recognized and understood in business. And two, it's just good business to be more inclusive and to have a greater diversity of people in your business, because the more diverse the people are in your business, the more chance you've got of having people who think differently from you, who are better at problem solving, and the broader your knowledge base is, the more likely you are to come up with great ideas, products, services, and move your business forward. I used to be a geologist, and many of my life experiences of being different, which I've always known, stem from being a geologist in the construction industry. And at the time, I didn't know I had Asperger's, but I knew I was different. So I use my experience, my lived experience of being a geologist in the construction industry, to come up with ways and build strategies and techniques to help employers say, well, if I was starting with a clean slate and I knew that I had Asperger's when I started work as a geologist, what would I do? How would I help someone like me? And how would I help employers manage someone like me so that I could do good work and I could do work that would benefit the business? And also that I would feel good and feel valued about the work that I do. So I do a weekly webinar, which is what we're on now. And I have the previous 80 episodes of that are on my YouTube channel. Please look it up. Subscribe, like, look at the videos. There must be something for there on the previous 80 episodes that is relevant to your business, or you're just curious and you want to know a little bit more about something. The topics are far ranging, and there's bound to be something there that can help you. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about relationships. And that's a biggie for us autistic people, and certainly for me, is because we struggle at relationships because it involves other people. And if I had to sum up my biggest challenge as being someone with Asperger's syndrome, it can sum up in that simple word: people. And the challenges are all over the place, because you have you have family relationships, you have friendship relationships, you have work relationships, and all three of those can be different. And the way that you deal with and cope and manage and react to and respond to people in those different settings can be different, which is very complicated for us, very complex. And we struggle at that. I still struggle. I'm 59 years old and I still struggle at relationships, because there is so much that can go wrong. We're not particularly good at reading body language, social cues, those wonderful things called the unwritten rules of social convention that you all know and we don't. It's like you get the manual when you're 18 or when you're 14 that says this is how to be a human being and interact with people, and they don't give me a copy, and we don't know how to react, how to be, how to socialize, how to ask questions, how to sit in meetings and want to say something but are too scared because you get shouted at or degraded or all sorts of other things. We have so much going on in our heads that you get perpetual generation of concerns, of ideas of, if I do this, then these 10 things might happen. If I do that, then these 20 things might happen. Trying to collate all of that into a pattern of behavior that might be deemed to be acceptable to others in those groups that we're in, excuse me, is a great challenge for us. And we really struggle. As I said, my biggest challenge as an autistic person, as someone with Asperger's syndrome, people. Because people are fickle. They don't always say what they mean, and they don't always mean what they say, and those two are different. Because there's an assumption. There's an assumption that neurotypical people know and understand about communication. Give you a very simple example. Back when I was a geologist, I was working late one night, and it ended up with being just me and my director, him in his office, me working away. And it was time for him. He'd finished up for the day, and he came out of his office and said, "Don't forget you're the last person out tonight, Andrew." And I went, "Yep, understood. Good, got it." And he looked at me and he thought, he hasn't got it. And he said to me, "Do you know what that means?" I said, "It means I'm the last person." He said, "No, it means you've got to set the alarm." Well, he didn't say that. He didn't say, "Andrew, don't forget, if you're the last person out tonight, please set the alarm." He just said to me, "Do you acknowledge you are the last person to leave the building tonight?" Yes. Understood that. I've got that. I've seen everyone else has left. It's just me. If I have another half an hour tonight, that I can get done in half an hour. What would take me 2 hours tomorrow with everyone buzzing around and interrupting me and everything. So I was quite happy. He didn't say, "Don't forget to set the alarm," because he understood that if you're the last person to leave the building, please set the alarm. I didn't know that. And I gave him this blank look and he went, "You don't know. You don't know that you've got to set the alarm." I said, "Okay, don't know where it is and what the number is, but yeah, let me know and I'll do my best." So that's just a very simple example of how you can get something spectacularly wrong. I wasn't given clear, precise, accurate information. There was an assumption, a very big assumption, that I knew what he meant by "you're the last one out tonight." Yeah, so what? Good, great, super smashing. If you want me to do something about that, if there's an action on me, make sure I know. And the look of bewilderment that I gave him told him that I didn't know what he meant and I hadn't understood that I had to set the alarm, which I didn't know where it was and I didn't know which door to go out of, etc. So we had to have a discussion, very short, 1 or 2 minute discussion on where the alarm is, how to set it, how to get out the door before the door shuts and shuts you in, and you then have to phone the police and blah, 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 alarm holders and all the rest of it. But all that stemmed from a simple conversation that I didn't understand the meaning of. I understood the words. I acknowledged to him, "Yep, understand, I'm the last person out the building tonight. Thanks for letting me know." But I didn't understand that that meant there was an action on me to do something. And just think about that for a moment. The next time you have a conversation with someone and you say something to them and they look at you and they go, "What? What do you mean?" And you go, "Well, I just told you I want you to do this." Uh-huh. But what does that mean? What do you actually mean? And is there something beyond the words you're saying that you're assuming I know? That's a very good example that I've just given you about last one out, set the alarm. And there hadn't been the memo circulated around the building that said, "If you're the last one out, please set the alarm and here's how to do it." Hadn't had that. Hadn't had that memo. So it wasn't as though I knew and I'd forgotten. I hadn't been given the memo. And this was in the days before we had computers, so he couldn't have sent me an email. This was in the days where you worked at your desk and you did all your calculations by hand at your desk and you did all the assessments and everything at your desk with your drawings, with your pile of information, and you worked at your desk and did stuff at your desk. I say that to my son now, and he goes, "What? What do you mean you didn't have computers?" I said, "We didn't have computers. We had to sit and do it longhand. We wrote reports out longhand, and we gave them to the typing pool. And some days later, we'd get it back. We'd read it. We'd have to do the typos because my handwriting was dreadful. And so getting a report done that you can do now, you now watching this with your computer, you can type up in however long it takes you, half a day, 2 days, depend. You print it out, you read it, you do a couple of things, boom, you send it off to your boss for review, etc. Everything done and dusted. It might take a week for that report to come back from the typing pool. I've then got to read it, correct it, send it back. It might take another week for it to come back from the typing pool. And you're sitting there dumbstruck going, "That's not possible. That is how things used to be before we had computers. Gone off track a bit there, but what I'm saying is be very specific about what you say. Last week's topic was about being clear, specific, and precise. And I do go on about that. It does pop up regularly in my webinars, but it's very important that when you're giving instructions or you're guiding someone or you're telling someone who's autistic or has Asperger's what you want them to do, be clear, be specific, be precise. It also helps for neurotypical people. It helps everyone else if you're clear, specific, and precise. So there's no ambiguity. There's no, oh, he's just told me this. What does he really mean? Because then if I have to interpret your vague instructions, who's to know I'm going to get it right until 2 weeks later when I've done the thing and given it back and go, oh, that's not what I want. And I have had that in my geological career, in the same company that I was telling you about, my director being the last one out. I had a colleague that I was working for, a more senior colleague than me, said, got this project in, do this, da 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 da. Want to report back at the end. Fine. Virtually no other conversation with him whatsoever. So I said, okay. Did him a report, gave it to him. Next day, it came back with red pen all over it. This is not what I wanted. I was so tempted to say, great, super smashing. You didn't tell me what you wanted. You just said, do a report. I've done a report. If you wanted certain things put in it, tell me. But I couldn't say that to him because he was more senior than to me and he was known to be volatile. So I had to sit there like the good little minion. Oh, well, I'm sorry, but what is it you'd like me to do? And I had to, it was like pulling teeth, getting out of him what he wanted me to do. There's a wonderful phrase, and I'm going to tone down the language, but it basically is something like garbage in, garbage out. If you have mangled, garbled, unclear, ambiguous instructions at the beginning, guess what? You're going to have rubbish coming out at the end of it. And it's not going to be what you wanted. So in relationships, be very clear about what you want, about what it is you're saying. If that's family, family can be the worst because there's this bond that you have, whether it's a strong bond or whether it's a weak bond. But there's this group collective that you have as a family where everyone is supposed to know the rules. I never got the memo. I don't understand those things. And that's not me being stupid. That's you haven't made it clear what you want. So it's very important in relationships, whether that's family, friends, or work or elsewhere, to be very clear about what you want. Because if we have to try and interpret what you've said, the alarm wouldn't have been set. I'd have tootled off, out the work, gone home. And I might only have ever realized that I was supposed to set the alarm when one of two things happened. Either, very unfortunately, that night, when I didn't set the alarm, someone broke in and wrecked the place. Or two, when the first person who came in the morning found that the alarm wasn't set and the call went round, who was the last person out last night who didn't set the alarm? Well, it was me, but no one told me. Don't assume with vague language. That can be family, friends, or work. Be very sure of what you're saying. And people interactions, like I said, that's my biggest struggle is interactions with people. Don't know whether you've ever seen it, and this is going back a little way, but there was a film called Stargate, and there was a television series that dropped off that, and then there was other spin-offs that dropped off that. But one of the series that dropped off Stargate of Stargate was Stargate Universe, where they discovered alien spaceships. They got on them. They traveled across the galaxy, solving problems every week. But the key to it all was a young man who was a gamer, And they set up the problem that they discovered this ship and all the rest of it without going into lots of detail. And they had a problem that they couldn't solve. They put the best minds on it and they couldn't solve this problem in a foreign language. It was a mathematical formula or construct. And so what they did was they set it up as a game so that when the person solved the game, they've solved the problem. And this young lad, a gamer, spends 90% of his time sat at his computer with his mates. What level are you on? Blah, blah, blah. He solved the problem in true paranoid fashion. The army turned up the next day. You've just solved this problem. This is really quite great. We need your help. The long story short is that right at the very end of it, they had to stay on the spaceship for a very long time. Their resources were running out. So what they did, and I'm getting to the point now, what they did was they put everyone in stasis. They had stasis pods. But someone had to remain out of the stasis pods to deal with anything that happened on the ship and to bring people out of stasis pods when it was time to. So the person that they chose to be the person who was not in stasis, who would look after things, was that young man, because he was happy being on his own because he was probably autistic. And we're very happy being on our own, in our own space. Yes, we like having relationships and they build those and develop those. But of all the people on the spaceship, he was the one who was less likely to go nuts for 2 years, 3 years, or whatever it was, on his own, on the big spaceship, zooming off on autopilot to wherever they were going around the galaxy. They gave it to the weird kid who does all the gaming stuff because he's is capable of surviving on his own without human interaction, without a great deal of human interaction. So that's what they did. That's a brief aside. But what I'm trying to get at is that we're quite happy being on our own. And having relationships is a great strain to us. It can be very difficult. Relationships with parents and with siblings, it's fraught with danger because we don't understand. Not through a lack of intelligence, but because our brains are wired differently. Our brains work in a different way and we comprehend things differently. So just as my boss said to me, you're the last one out. Do you understand? Yep, fine, got that. Didn't know anything about the alarm. I didn't know to make that leap to say, oh, I'm the last one out. Is there an alarm I need to set? So when you're having conversations with people you love or people you work with or friends and they are autistic, be very aware that we will take what you say literally. And if that is ambiguous, we will struggle, because if it's not clear, we don't know what to do. And we will torture ourselves for half an hour or a day, not knowing what to do and not feeling that we're able to communicate that with your boss who's given you this vague instruction and it's gone off to a meeting and you're sat there going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. He hasn't told me clearly enough for me to understand what to do. So we don't know what to do. So we won't start anything because if we get it wrong, we'll get shouted at. You might think that's just a bit paranoid from me, but it isn't. And there's a lot of people out there who are neurotypical who have these problems as well. So it's not just the 1% or the 2% of people who are neurodiverse or who have autism. There are many, many other people who struggle with unclear instructions. And why wouldn't you struggle? So in having those relationships with people, be very clear about what you're saying. Be very clear. And we can really struggle with that and relationships and building trust. Trust in relationships is the framework around which relationships are built. If you trust someone, you get on with them, you love them, you respect them, you've built up that trust, then you've got an understanding of how they work, of how they react to things, and that's all fine. break that trust and you're in trouble. I'm in trouble. If someone does something that betrays me or breaks my trust, I don't want anything to do with that person anymore. It's not like, oh, well, yeah, I'll get over it and give him another chance. I really struggle with that. If I've been let down by someone in a big way about something that's really important to me, I really struggle with that. And a lot of autistic people do struggle with that because we built up a relationship with them, and you just bam, you just destroyed that relationship with one simple act. And it's very hard for us to then go back to that relationship and try to rebuild it. Because why? If we've been betrayed, if we've been let down, if we've been shown up, if we've been humiliated, if we've been degraded, and all of these things happen to us because we're different, because we stand out, because we're the odd one in the corner with a misfit, use the word freak, but the misfit in the corner, the odd one, the strange one, the person who, when you're having an office gathering, is in the corner on their own, trying to fathom out how on earth do I go and speak to people and get on with people when they're all busy doing interacting and things, and I don't understand how to do that. So if you break our trust, we're not good at getting that back, giving you the opportunity to rebuild that, because we feel very let down. And the emotional impact of that is incredibly draining. To have been let down by someone that's important to you, something that's important to you, is really hard to for us to cope with. And we just won't then want to have anything to do with you. You've broken the trust, right? That's it, done. We don't want to try and rebuild the relationship, because if you've destroyed our trust in something, and it could be something that was deeply personal to us, then we're not going to want to be over. And a lot of people are. If you break someone, if you betray someone with something that's important to them, then you're not going to get a good response, and it happens to a lot of people. So, but it happens it more so to us because we find it hard to build lots of relationships. So losing a friend or a valued colleague that you respect, then you've built up that over the time, over months and years, to have that boom betrayal, that being let down. We can't just go back to what it was. Yeah, okay, we'll carry on. We can't do that. We really struggle with that. And so because we don't have many of those kinds of relationships, we'll struggle with trying to build another relationship with another person. And those take time for us. We're not easy to build a relationship with. We find it very hard because of the lived experience we've had of where we've been degraded, humiliated, picked on, bullied, all the things that when you see the television programs and the films about the geeky kid who gets this happened, that, and debagged, and they head down the toilet, and all of those things, we have that happen to us. And so it's not easy for us to step out of that and go, yeah, I'm here, great, hey, I'm Andrew, let's build friends. We find that very hard and very difficult. When we build a relationship with someone and we've got a good relationship, then we are absolutely tight with that person and we trust them, and it's a great relationship. But you damage that, we're not going to want to have anything to do with it. And I've had that with family. Yeah, that's a story for another day. But I've had it with people that are close to me, and I've lost friends because of those things, and I've lost respect for work colleagues because of those things, and it's hard to get back. We don't want to get that back, because why should we? For you to go and betray us again, or let us down again? But why? There's no investment of our time and our resources and our opening up ourselves to be build a relationship with if you're going to just destroy it every 5 minutes. So we struggle with that. What else have we got here? Understanding of language. Yes, back to what I said about you're the last one out. Yeah, understood. Hadn't been told about the alarm, but understanding of language is important. If there's something behind what you've said that you're assuming other people know, don't assume that autistic people know, or people with Asperger's, because we didn't get the manual. We don't understand how those unwritten rules of social convention and body language, and this is what I mean by when I say that. We don't understand that, and we really struggle with that, and we could be left standing high and dry thinking, what? Hey, don't understand. And we really do have great difficulty with that. So relationships are a, a, a challenging thing for all autistic people, people with Asperger's syndrome, because we don't know what to expect. We certainly don't know what's expected of us. So with those two simple things, we can get in the right guddle and not understand because it's not made clear to us. Back to what last week's topic was about: be clear, be specific, be precise in the language that you use when talking to autistic people, to anyone, but it's particularly relevant when talking to autistic people or people with Asperger's syndrome, because we won't get it. We don't get it. We have to have things spelled out to us. And I'm going to say this because I want it to get it across in the right context. But sometimes with an autistic person, you have to speak to them as though they're a child. That's not to degrade them, but it's to get the comprehension across of what it is you want to say. I'm not suggesting that we all go around speaking to autistic people, adults, as though they're children. I'm not saying that. But sometimes if you're in a situation where you, the neurotypical person, is trying to get something across to the autistic person and you're really struggling, break it down into very simple, easy to understand language and take your time with it. I want you to do this. Then I want you to do that. Then I want you to do the third thing. Boom, boom, boom. Telling at each point, each time, what it is you want them to do. Rather than, here's 10 things I want you to do with this stuff. Off you go. Ooh, don't do that. That won't work. That will not work. That's bad management. That's bad leadership because you're giving ambiguous instructions. It's disrespectful because you haven't taken the time to sit down with that person and explain what it is you want to do. If you've got a piece of work that you're expecting this autistic or anyone to do, and it's going to take them a week, then I guarantee you can afford to spend an hour or two on Monday morning to sit down with them in a meeting room with a cup of tea, with all the information you need, with your checklist to go through what it is you want them to do so that they can set off on the right track and you can monitor how they're doing throughout the course of the week. That's how good leaders lead. That's how your team understand what it is you want them to do. That's how they know the communication channels that you're setting up so that they're going to say, I'm going to be out all day Tuesday. So if there's any problems you've got, come and see me before you go on Monday afternoon, or perhaps we'll have a catch up on Wednesday morning. That catch up on Wednesday morning might just be 10 or 15 minutes with a cup of tea. I'm a great believer in having those sorts of things with a cup of tea or coffee, because it shows that you're taking the time to understand that you need to have a conversation with this person about what it is you want them to do, and have they grasped and understood what it is. If you can't afford to do that for an hour, you shouldn't be in management. You shouldn't be leading teams if you can't afford to take that time to set out what it is you want them to do. If you set us off in the right track, we'll go away back. Leave us to it. We'll go for it. As long as we know that we can contact you whenever we need to, if there's something that's cropped up, which is your checking in, which is one of my 7 steps program on how to manage Asperger's syndrome in the workplace. Checking in is really important, but it needs to be done right. So that has been episode 81 of Talking Asperger's with Andrew, and it's about relationships, and it all comes down to communication. Most of all the things that I talk about in my webinars and in my 7 steps program on how to better manage Asperger's syndrome in the workplace is about communication. It's about setting out the right communication from the start through the monitoring to the checking in to the finish to the final objective, and then the review, then the feedback, and so on. All of that is one big circle, and you break the link in any point in that circle, and you then have a problem. So always make sure that in your circle of activities from a job, from start, briefing, checking in, how have they done, review, completion, feedback. Make sure that loop works every time, all the time. And if there's a break point in it, it will fail. So keep on top of it, keep your communication clear, and things will be better. And if the autistic person, understands what they're doing, and you've given us the opportunity to assimilate what you've said and ask questions, got the checklist, got the information, we'll get up and running and we'll go with it. And we won't spend all our time doing this, looking down at our phones all day. We'll be getting on with the job. So that's episode 81 of Talking Asperger's with Andrew. If you have an Asperger's related issue at work, or you've had someone whose name keeps cropping up with management, this person is grating with management, he's had a disciplinary last month and his name came up again this month, it just might be that that person is autistic or has Asperger's syndrome, and you haven't adjusted how you manage that person. You're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole and it's not working, and you're trying to blame the employee rather than the management of how that person needs to be managed to get the best out of them. So just because someone's name keeps cropping up at your management meetings, a disciplinary, and eventually goes to HR, does not mean that that's the problem. That's the symptom. But the problem could be something completely different. So look me up on my YouTube channel, and if you've got any questions about managing Asperger's syndrome in the workplace, please feel free to drop me a line. You can get me on my website, which is aspergersmatters.com. There's a contact form there, or you can get me on my email, which is andrew@aspergersmatters.com. Keep a lookout for this video, which will be posted on tomorrow afternoon usually, and on Friday afternoon or Saturday morning will be when I'll be posting what next week's topic is for next week's webinar. So until then, take care, look after yourselves, and keep your communication channels open and clear, and you've got a better chance of being successful. Take care.